So the opera Final Fantasy VI brought together all the...
the real thing?
I'm going to read the real thing.
Okay.
I spent a lot of time on this paragraph. The opera Final Fantasy VI brought together all the elements of video game music composition that Uematsu had developed working on the NES and the SNES into a complete story told entirely through music within a video game. Awesome. How do you top something like that? May we introduce the PlayStation?
It's you.
Sega. We made that joke in the run-through, and we had to do it.
Yeah. Please don't call lawyers, please. Cool.
Star Wars.
Sega still has lawyers.
So I have a very brief thing to say about the PlayStation. So the PlayStation audio solution is just a beefed up SNES. Like, it's a beefed up Super Nintendo. I mean, that makes sense because the guy who designed the audio for the Super Nintendo ultimately was heavily involved in the design of the PlayStation. So the Super Nintendo was an 8-voice wavetable synth, so you could play 8 voices or 8 notes at once. And that was a SNES. The PlayStation is a 24-voice wavetable synth. More RAM, it's got 512K. It could do a little more clever stuff with loading samples dynamically. It had 2 effects processors built in. Although you would take a hit on your available audio memory, the more time you used on these like delay reverb processors. So people didn't actually use them that much. Yeah, I mean, they just kind of, they took what the Super Nintendo could do and they said, let's have more. And even with 24 voices, the funny thing is, I couldn't find very much PS1 titles, especially early titles, that actually used more than 16 of the voices. And my guess is that they kind of had sort of a standard that's like, these 16 voices, give them the music, go nuts. We're going to reserve 8 for UI, menu sounds, action sounds on screen. That way, we're never having to borrow voices from each other, which made a lot more sense because as your games get more complicated, you could have music playing, sound effects happening on screen while you're back in a menu doing stuff around. And it just makes sense that they would actually have to reserve quite a number of voices just to get the sound effects to work without robbing the music of their playback tracks. Right.
I'm going to jump us through a little bit.
Yeah, I was going to say. I mean, it all kind of, like, we've been talking about, the orchestra just builds up and builds up and builds up throughout the Final Fantasy titles. And it really kind of culminates, and, like, the real orchestra stuff begins in the final games, and it all really comes to One Winged Angel. It's great.
Yeah, so Final Fantasy VII, I'm sure we're all really familiar with the tune One Winged Angel.
There it is. So good. It's Stravinsky plus Jimi Hendrix. It's amazing.
Plus Psycho.
Yeah, he borrowed a lot from Ray.
Check this out. Oh, can you keep going? This melody.
A little Purple Haze thrown in there.
It's totally Purple Haze. And you've got the Psycho like smashes. And if you're familiar with Stravinsky's Rite of Spring, can you play the very beginning?
Yeah.
The Rite of Spring, after you have this wonderful bassoon melody you get, it's almost like ripped directly out. It's amazing.
It's straight from Rite of Spring. There's like a section with 11 big hits in Rite of Spring. You get
That's how you remember it.
He doesn't use that many, but it's just straight out. It's a great use of it.
Yeah. So what I wanted to say is, so Uematsu, when he got to the PlayStation, had this like wonderful sound palette to work with. He had this wonderful instrument to sort of tell stories with. However, there was a ton of options, which is something he wasn't used to. He was a man who excelled at striving through limitations. Right? He needed boundaries. That was his like way of composing. So. Like, rather than work within the conventions of the system, the PlayStation, he made the system work around the conventions of his musical imagination. He created limitations for himself in order to make this piece. And one of the things that he did that no other Final Fantasy game had or could do up to this point was sung lyrics, right? Sephiroth, right? All of those lyrics are... Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say it. You can say it too.
All of those lyrics were taken from a collection of medieval poems. And what's really interesting is there's another really famous piece that took the same poems, and that's Karl Orff's Carmina Burana. Yeah, and it's very interesting. It's the same exact poetry.
It sounds like really dark in here, but actually two of the movements that he that use the same poetry are like very light and very happy, like kind of tavern bar song. So I actually didn't even realize that it was the same.
Yeah, that the lyrics were like, come, oh please, I don't want to die.
And I played that piece a million times, and I never really thought about what it translated to. It's pretty dark. I have a whole new perspective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, why don't we listen to?
Let's
let's listen to the track by track. We're going to go.
We're gonna build you One Winged Angel.
We got a nice orchestral bass drum. It's pretty convincing orchestral big bass drum sound. Timpani, offbeats.
Yeah.
Yeah, whatever that is.
It's a dirty symbol.
Some bassoon,
It's
very
like a dirty
nasty.
crash symbol.
Building strings again, which is a pretty common theme that he's got a string quartet or trio. Uematsu, like in almost everything.
So this is a very Tchaikovsky style, like string maneuver. It's like really big, like runs, sort of like reaching just inside.
I think we're gonna get to our lyrics here in a second.
By this point, you've probably played the game for about 40 to 60 hours, and you've never heard a lyric, and suddenly this is here. Oh, see, that's pretty awesome, because it usually took me running like Mimic Materia on like W Materia with Knights of the Round on repeat like 8 times. Because, I don't know. I loved it. I would just... Yeah, that's true. I would just watch it and be like, yeah, one more night. There's another one. Do the space one. Oh, the sword. Yeah. And if you remember correctly, what follows this, right, is Cloud faces off with Sephiroth, right? What's the music there? Right. And it's like super quiet. And there's more silence than notes almost. And it's amazing. You just went through this amazing, like huge orchestral like nightmare of music. It's great. And then you get this like super like very intimate piece. And it's like that's how they end the game. That's your last input as a character. It's great. Okay, so I think we can finally splash our logo. That we're Final Fantasy VII. We hope you like and subscribe. Final Fantasy VII. Yeah.
Look at that.
Lily, how about you read us out?
I'm gonna just read it right off the thing so everyone can see it. No. Uematsu did and does an amazing job of taking something pretty small and turning it into something that's more than the sum of its parts. He used all those limitations to his total advantage. And I think that really probably having that foundation and being able to slowly build like console to console and getting more, he just got better and better and smarter about how to use things. And writing the opera and seeing the power that like an epic piece of music can have on a video game was just huge and groundbreaking and like really affected people, and he gave them the tools he needed to write One Winged Angel. Orchestra carried on until 2004 when Russell went freelance. He still plays his Final Fantasy music with the Black Mage. I think that music's disbanded.
I thought, did they disband? Weren't they coming back together for a little thing recently?
Now he has a band called Earthbound Tacos. Yeah.
Good
Oh,
name.
that's right.
Really?
Thank you.
Yeah,
Awesome.
Fact check.
Oh.
That's rad.
And it should be noted that so you have the Distant Worlds
I was gonna say, you got Distant
Orchestra.
Worlds.
Uematsu has stated that playing One Winged Angel with Distant Worlds and the Black Mages was to him the way that piece should be performed. He was like, this is how it should sound. And so, yeah, we hope that you enjoyed our panel.
Thank you, everyone.
That's us. So, thank you.
So I think we've got
I
like
used
2
my help
minutes.
once.
Oh, yes. Hello.
You didn't actually explain how the vocal track was implemented. Was it like a bunch of little?
Oh,
samples
it's so much voodoo magic in that. Oh my god. Brendan, do you want to give a little bit of insight? Because we were both
I have no
we were
idea.
both bonkers baffled about that one.
So I looked.
Magic.
I looked a lot. I didn't find any specific documentation on how it was done. My guess is that they took 3 voices of the 16 available, or maybe they stole some UI voices, and they're basically dynamically loading samples between those voices. So it's like voice 1 is like, 2 kilobytes worth of a sound, and then voice 2 is another 2 kilobytes, and then voice 3 is another 2 kilobytes. And while they're going like 1, 2, 3, that's enough time to unload 1 and get the next syllable into voice 1 again.
Yeah,
So
with a little bit of like reverb kind of effect to help them cross over.
yeah, like it would have been a pain in the butt, but it's totally doable because you just sit, like at that point, these guys have been developing for the SNES forever, and my understanding is that the PS wanted very similar implementation, just more. So I have a feeling they probably had some pretty clever tools to be able to take a long piece of audio and say, oh, we just chop it up, and then we can dynamically load it. Yes?
There's one piece of Orchestra that you guys like.
Yes?
The reason why there's some crazy long cutscenes in that one battle,
Yeah.
and that's why you get the vocal track, is that's what they use to save memory, the loading time to actually load those samples to play them.
That's awesome.
That's the only reason why that one has
That's dope.
ridiculous cutscenes
Yeah.
and vocal tracks.
Yeah, that makes sense because they're having to get a bunch of samples into memory, which they don't usually have to do. So they have to accommodate for that. Yes, Sick, where
I love One Way Radio, but I have to say, I would come back to watch that for 4 hours just breaking down dancing now.
Oh man,
So I really
we had
wanted
a
to
lot.
put Dancing
Yeah.
Madden, but we just don't have time. So we're gonna do
Yeah,
a
I'm
video.
also a huge fan of Clash at the Bridge. Yeah. Oh man, yeah.
We
Where
were
was my
like,
Final Fantasy V beat at? Yeah. Oh yeah.
Doing this, we were like, we can get like 6 videos out.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Like the shameless plug. So High Score is our YouTube video channel.
Like and subscribe.
We finished our pilot a few months ago, and we spent the last maybe 6 months. Well, we spent the last 6 months building a studio so that we could make more videos.
Yeah, we
And
kind of got
this
kicked
panel-
out of our old place.
Yeah, this panel was
did
sort of the
nothing.
kick in our pants to actually go from building frames and putting up drywall and installing gear into actually creating more content. So we have more channels coming out, but our pilot is called What the is an Ocarina, and we go over the history of the ocarina. We go over the different types of ocarinas and how they produce pitch, how they make sound, and then we look at Ocarina of Time and we talk about how Koji Kondo and the game designers use the ocarina as an element of game design. And how the game is actually influenced by the use of the ocarina, which we found really interesting.
Yeah. I think we had a question over there.
Oh, yeah, first off, I just want to say that so thank you guys.
Awesome.
Oh yeah,
Thank you, Travis, for digging that up.
Yeah, that was a lot of research.
I'm curious to hear just from each of you what you consider the most important track for Final Fantasy that was not written by
Oh my god.
So I'm going to confess something here, which is going to get lots of people mad. I have never, ever played a Final Fantasy game.
I know.
I didn't have a console for a long time. I grew up weird.
I
It's
was
not my
gonna
fault.
say I've
Excuses.
never played any of the later ones because I only
But-
just now got like a
I haven't played any of the
PlayStation a
original
month ago.
Yeah,
I love your
I'm
shirt.
the big Final Fantasy nerd.
But yeah, do you guys have a non-Uematsu Final Fantasy fave?
Maybe Travis.
Let's see.
Travis, we are useless.
I gotta say, there is. So I was playing a lot of Final Fantasy 15, and what I really enjoyed, weirdly enough, was the sort of not the overture, but the music that plays at the beginning of like the movie. Weirdly enough, because like Final Fantasy 15 is like, hi, we're a video game and we're also a movie and we're also an anime. So like, have fun figuring it out, because if you just start the game, you're actually going to miss like half the story, and we just kind of set you in the middle. It's really interesting that way, and I like that, because I'm a huge like dweeb for anime, and I'll watch anything with Sean Bean giving a voice in it, and of course he has to die, right?
He does not die in Jupiter Ascending.
That's not a
terrible
movie.
film.
died in Silent Hill as the dad.
Oh my God, you're right.
Wow.
Yeah.
I was 3!
Yeah.
Where the dad died!
Yeah, so weirdly, we have some like ideas for Silent Hill videos in the future. By the way, if you guys have any ideas for videos that we should do, please let us know, because we love talking about music and and stuff. But yeah, the sort of like overture to that movie, the music that sets the stage, I thought did a really amazing job. And I was just like, oh, like I'm not only in like a Final Fantasy universe, but I know that like I'm not interacting with it, which is very hard to do musically. To be like, hello, this is different, but it's not too different.
I've only been playing Breath of the Wild for the past like 400 hours, so I don't have time for anything else.
Yeah, same.
Awesome. I know we've gone a little bit over. It's okay if we take a few
We've
more
gone a
questions.
bit too far
or
in a
should
few
we-
places.
Oh, cool. Yeah. So that is assuming, of course, if anyone has a question they'd like to ask. No, that's
right.
okay.
We're gonna wrap.
So we'll go here.
N64 Essential. You didn't know anything about that.
Wait.
This has actually been a huge new thing for me because I mean I work in audio and I did work on a modern video game with a modern kind of engine. So it's been really great to just kind of go back and look at it because my experience with this era of sampling is with like DX7s and DX9s and analog synthesizers. And early sequencing and tape sequencing and stuff like that. So it's been really cool to learn about this, but I'm not an expert. This has all just been like, oh wow, look at this. So we didn't go to the N64 because it wasn't within the scope of this video. My understanding is that it's pretty similar to the SNES, that you're still in wavetable WAN.
Yeah, and
Yes.
it's a much beefier thing. Sorry, just the oh sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
What software did you use to break down
So yeah, there are a lot of like SPC players and things like that. I used one called Overloud, or no,
Audio Lore.
Audio Loud. Hold on.
Overloud.
I can tell you.
Overwatch. Yeah.
I have the name because I'm looking
That's
on my
360
computer.
Nesco.
Audio Overload, and that is the only
Oh, I wish it was
the
Overload.
only kind of chiptune player that I found from Mac that I could actually get to install. And I know for PC there's a lot of other options.
That's us. Yeah. That's
Yeah.
us.
So I used Audio Overload, which allows you to export a WAV file, and it also allows you to mute the voices. So I kind of did it the hard way. I just went in and I said, okay, I'm going to mute all of the voices in this 8-channel chiptune file except for voice 1, export, watch the little bar go by, and wash, rinse, and repeat for about 158 files or something.
Yeah.
So-
We were in the studio together, and I think it was about 4.5 hours.
Yeah, much YouTube was watched.
Yeah,
So
I think we watched all of Ghostbusters and half of a Godzilla movie.
yeah, that's about right.
Yeah.
So that's
It
how
was awesome.
that's how we did it because I'm coming from an audio design and recording end of things, so I wanted to get things into my DAW so that I could actually stick them on tracks and kind of explore it that way. But I know there's actually a lot of really interesting things here. So there's a huge community of people looking at developing like chiptune players and things
Yeah.
where you can mute voices and you can turn off the oscillators features and things like that. I mean,
Yeah,
there's
if
so
you're
much
familiar
cool
with
stuff.
Pixelated Audio, the podcast, they're great. They have a panel tomorrow. I think it's at noon or 2. Don't quote me. Check it out. But they do a lot of stuff where they like multi-channel out like classic tunes for the NES, the PC Engine, or the TurboGrafx 16 for us, and lots of other consoles. And like they're really good at that. Like that's it. They do it on the fly. And I'm not sure what kind of software they're using, but I'm going to pick their brains tomorrow after their panel. 12:30. Thank you.
Pixelated Audio.
It's either in this room or that room because there are 2 panel rooms. But the quick thing I wanted to mention, you mentioned the N64 sound chip. Yes, there too. And the PlayStation sound chip was made by Ken Kutigari, who invented the PlayStation. He made the Super Nintendo sound chip in secret from like the Sony execs, and then delivered it to Nintendo. Nintendo signed it on, and then Ken went to Sony and said, "Hi, we need to partner with Nintendo and create a console with them. We need to create their disc add-on for the Super Nintendo," and that's where you got the Nintendo PlayStation. And in the process of dealing with Sony, Nintendo backed out and worked with their old classic working partner, Philips, and licensed out their games to Philips, which created the CDI and the horrible, horrible Zelda games.
So
Oh,
good.
no,
The Wand of Gamelon.
Excuse
And,
me.
yeah, it's so bad. Yeah,
I know.
Right?
I know.
Oh, I know. Oh, these feel awesome. It would just be Breath of the Wild. But so in response, Sony was like, "Oh, like whatever, Nintendo, we're going to make our own." They made a division for video games and hired Ken to make the PlayStation, and we all know how that turned out. So the N64's sound chip is like the I like to think of it as the like the doppelganger of the SNES sound chip, because it's like, you know, Nintendo's like, no, we can do it better. You know, we figured this out, and it's like, I mean, it's good, but like PlayStation's real good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, I think I saw a question in the back. Did you still have a question? Yeah.
Oh, you guys touched a lot on the NES, but you never touched on the Game Boy.
We didn't.
Yeah.
Final Fantasy Adventure.
I
know. Well, it's funny because Uematsu did write the music for those. And if you're not familiar with, I think in the States it's Final Fantasy Legends. Is that right? For the Game Boy, they're really good games. They're solid games. Like good game design, good gameplay, really fun, and the music's great. And it, you know, the way the Game Boy makes sound is like bonkers as well. Like it's a whole different thing, and it's actually like super interesting. There are cartridges that you can get that will unlock the sound chip for the Game Boy, and then you can plug that into a MIDI controller and use the like synth wavetable of the Game Boy as your MIDI device, and it's awesome. But yeah, we didn't go for any of the mobile games, and we didn't do tactics, obviously, which is a personal favorite of mine. But yeah, you know what's up. But that's because we wanted to kind of keep it to a narrative, right? Even though there's not a through line in terms of the stories from Final Fantasy 1 through 7, there's a through line in terms of the story of Final Fantasy. You know, like where it came from and where it's going. And we feel like, you know, going from the prelude of Final Fantasy 1 through One Winged Angel of Final Fantasy 7 really helps to bring to life this idea that Uematsu had of creating a narrative through music and sound design.
I was gonna say it was a neater package.
Yeah. But to answer your question, the music in the Game Boy games is dope. Yeah.
What did that answer?
Let's go. We'll go back and then to the front. The chiptune version, yeah.
How do you guys feel about the
I mean, I love hearing it, and I'm like an orchestral player, and so for me, I'm like, oh, I would love to play that because it just combines my intensive love of video games.
Yeah, we actually play with an orchestra that does stuff like that.
Yeah. But
Yeah,
like,
you know,
I love the chip tunes, and if I was playing the game, like, yeah, I would want the chip tunes. It matches what you're seeing. Like, I don't know, maybe it was.
I feel
I
like,
have a hard time with like the remasters when they make everything super flashy because it's like it's cool, but you know, there's a certain nostalgia to it.
It's always in addition to, you know, it's not instead of.
Yeah.
It's not like Star Wars, right? It's not like let's get rid of all the old good ones and replace it with the real thing it should be now. Oh God.
And we might also not be the people to ask because I think musicians in particular. You know, like if I hear a reorchestration of a tune, even if it's not my favorite, I just think it's so cool to hear a new version, you know, and new instrumentation, because I'm kind of thinking about it with a musician brain or with an arranger brain. And I think that what you're touching on is a lot of people don't do that. That things get in the uncanny valley. Yeah. They're like, oh, I recognize this song, but it's wrong. Oh, you know, and that's when, you know, that can be upsetting for people. And I don't think that's baggage that most musicians have. Because it's really hard to get a gig if you're that rigid about how music sounds.
Yeah, and a quick anecdotal answer to that is, did you play Link Between Worlds? When I turned that game on, I was blown away because I had this full orchestral, wonderful, like homage to Link to the Past, and it was like musically just a really wonderful experience. You know,
it's so good.
I'm the same way, and people are always like, oh yeah, like why do you like the music?
Yeah, I mean,
cool.
you can like both, you know, like it's not like now you can't do the old one. Sorry, we're going to go on to, I believe you had a question? Yes? Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Everything you went over with the NES, does that also apply to Famicom? And what is like the difference?
Can I take this one, or you
Yeah,
want to
go for it.
So the Famicom had the same limitations of the NES until you get to the special sound chip that was only used in a few Japanese-only Famicom games, and I think it's Castlevania 3, right? Castlevania 3 for the Famicom had a special like sound chip that worked in tandem with the Famicom's like onboard sound chip, and added 2 more voices. And so like when you listen to the Famicom's version of the Castlevania 3 soundtrack, it's way bigger and way more awesome. Well, I should say it's in addition to more awesome. You know, like it's great. But they, unless I'm mistaken, Brendan, you did some research. I
think they're pretty similar, but we actually narrowed the scope on this because we were running out of time. And I didn't look at the Famicom hardly at all.
But yeah, I've listened to a lot of Famicom soundtracks, and I've not heard a difference. And it would be really expensive, right, to have to reprogram all the sound. And so I'm pretty sure that the chips were actually the same. But check out the Castlevania 3 soundtrack from the Famicom. Yeah. Oh, yes, you're familiar. And it has all this extra stuff in it because of the special chip. And you can actually hack that too, which is a super interesting thing.
So I think we're at time.
Yes.
That's
cool.
Thank you, everyone.
If you have more questions and stuff, you can follow us into the hallway. We'll be talking for a while, or at least I know I will be, because this is the most fun I've had in a very long time, and it's
sad, really.
Yeah. But a quick bump. You can check us out at bit.ly/highscoremusic. That'll take you to our YouTube channel, and you can go to facebook.com/highscorevideos because I'm very good at making confusing URLs. And that'll take you to our Facebook page. But otherwise, yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.